And now I will dive into the program and explain you how this conference will work, what will be the structure. So we will have the morning session, and the morning session will feature research. In the presentations, we will try to define the current situation of the modernist housing built after the World War II, the main challenges, opportunities, and the possible ways of approaching the topic. So we will have the presentations from Baltic states, Lithuania and Latvia, Ukraine, Italy, and two keynote lectures by the laureates of 2017 and 2019 European Prize for Contemporary Architecture Mies van der Rohe Prize Award. In the afternoon session, we will present a good practice. So we will see great examples from Ireland, Finland, Denmark, Greece, Slovakia, and France. And a research article on the situation in Estonia will follow. Each presentation will last approximately 30 minutes. I will look at the watch, and if I see that there's a couple of minutes left, we could make some questions to the lecturer. And after the conference, the resume will be presented to the Madrid Forum as a part of the report on the affordable housing from the Region 2. And also the projects you will hear about will be presented in the exhibition that will be open on 16th of May, right before the Madrid Forum 2022 in Madrid. And all the research, the projects, and even more articles will be laid in a book. So we will announce about it at the beginning of summer. And if you missed some presentation or want to listen to it again, the record of the conference will be available at the Facebook page of Architects Association of Lithuania. So now we will start our presentation. So I will be the first lecturer. I can see that we are a little bit late, so I will try to be very quick with my presentation. Let me share my screen again with some different content. So I will talk you more or less about how we are dealing with the housing renovation in Lithuania regarding the housing that was built after the World War II. So here locally we call it Soviet blocks. It's not applicable to all the Europe because in all the Europe we have similar projects, but they were not always, built by Soviets. But in our part of Europe, they are called Soviet blocks. Why we decided that this topic is important? Because of the new European Bauhaus. The new European Bauhaus is interlinked with two other crucial programs of European Union, the Green Deal and the Renovation Wave. So naturally, when thinking about the improvement of the built stock and its more efficient, just and socially enhancing use, the housing topic comes to the front line. And quoting the Parliament member Marcos Rosampere, the new European Bauhaus should not become an elitist project and end up with a nice exhibition or a book. It should bring some real tangible changes in the life of all the society. And also the new European Bauhaus initiative should correspond to the Renovation of Wave program and contribute to regeneration and improvement of real buildings and spaces. And finally, the motivation for the Architects Association in Lithuania to step into the new European Bauhaus program with this initiative lies in the statement that the new European Bauhaus, the Renovation Wave, and the Green Deal emphasizes culture as a core and not only decorative force in the formation of the environment. So we are very happy to have our Baltic colleagues, Latvian and Estonian unions of architects, to join us in our endeavor. So in Lithuania, we have several governmental renovation programs, but something is wrong with them. Those programs run for more than a decade, but the results are far from satisfactory. Apparently, the restitution of private property after 1991, because in Soviet Union there was no private property, so every housing belonged to the state. After the independence, everyone had got a right to buy some real estate. So after 1991, there was a solid foundation laid to many problems related with the transformations of modernist housing, as every apartment now has its owner and every decision must be taken with a consensus. That is being said not only about the poor activity and interest by the inhabitants, but also about the content and scope of renovation. Until now, the renovation of modernist housing usually, with some exceptions, ends with insulation and energy efficiency. However, The European Bauhaus is based on three values: sustainability, aesthetics, and inclusivity. And the latter two are so far missing in our renovation endeavor. So the main problem is that after the renovation, the houses and the whole micro-rayons, so-called districts, lose their architectural identity. No added value to the individual flats nor public spaces is being created, and nor the communities nor culture of living together are improved. Can we do it better? What's the idea of holistic renovation? So with this initiative, we are trying to raise a movement to create a model methodology and probably to implement a pilot project of something more, with improvement of each flat, common indoor and outdoor spaces, at the same time keeping the visual quality and architectural unity of the whole quarter. And of course, the renovation process should include the inhabitants. Additionally, we search for chances for new financial and legal tools that will allow participation of different stakeholders in renovation. And also, we feel that although this housing stock is quite old, it's already 50 years old, we think that it's a perfect ground for technological innovations to apply. So this initiative aims to gather an interdisciplinary think tank, as Angela mentioned, to create a methodology and toolkit for a holistic renovation and to test it in a pilot project. What we've done so far in Lithuania. Last year, in 2021, with partnership of the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Culture of Lithuania, the Architects Association of Lithuania had organized 2 discussions and a workshop with more than 60 participants. The discussion was moderated by me, and aiming to highlight multifaceted nature of the topic and to gather a variety of ideas, an interdisciplinary panel was selected, featuring architects, historians, designers, geographers, city planners, activists, politicians, lawyers, construction materials producers, communities representatives, writers, designers, and representatives from relevant institutions such as universities, ministries, heritage protection department, Vilnius mayor, etc. So we wanted everyone to get on board and to say what they think on the topic and what would be the main challenges in their field and what could be the opportunities. When we were aiming at the topic, holistic renovation of modern housing, we saw that there are many different topics to address. So in the discussion, some questions addressed by the panelists were, and among the others, artistic and historical value, identification of the artistic, historic, and cultural value of the housing built in Soviet period, second half of 20th century. How can we preserve those values during the renovation? Then we were talking about the potential of urban architectural transformation. How can renovation improve private and common spaces inside and outside the buildings? Then we were talking about innovative, sustainable, and communal way of the life through design. How can we lead more sustainable and quality way of living in a renovated housing? That is not only to fix our environment, but also to change the way of living of the inhabitants. Also, we were analyzing how to empower the communities, how to create social justice, social heterogeneity, and accessibility, how to engage inhabitants to ensure social equity, availability, accessibility, and social variety in renovated housing. Also, we were talking about sustainability, ecology, and nature. How can we implement innovative and sustainable technological solutions during renovation? And probably the most challenging is the topic of new models of economy. How can we raise the financial value of the renovated housing? How can we attract private businesses into the process? And what are the new innovative models of renovation in terms of organizing and financing? So as you see, the topics are many, and I will just describe you more in brief one of them, just to illustrate how those discussions in Lithuania are going. So I chose just the first topic, which is artistic value of the modernist housing. And we were talking about the biggest challenges. What are the biggest challenges related with the housing built after the Second World War? So first is a negative image. Everyone thinks that these houses are dull, they are gray, they are not interesting, and they are not attractive. Another problem is that we have no research on those housing and no data. So how can we plan any reconstruction or renovation if we don't have including drawings of those buildings, nor we have the evaluation of their physical state. Then we have a really bad physical condition of these housing. Although they are not that old, only 50 years old, but you have to have in mind that in Soviet times, they were built with a lack of technology skills. The construction technology was not the best, and also the construction materials were not the best quality. And another one important thing that, you know, in that system, people used to use their position of being on site, so there was a lot of theft. So it was, you know, the composition of concrete was not always according to the standards. So right now, those houses are really in that physical condition. Also, one of the challenges is that today some investors want to densify those quarters, but without seeing the whole. So we have new additions that disrupt architectural composition, visual relations, and traditions of culture and common activities. For example, if we have one common courtyard and you build some new addition inside that courtyard, so there's no more courtyard, no more traditional events, and no more traditional activities over there. Then we have a problem of insufficient expertise of planning specialists. So when we go to the municipality, there are no competent people to talk about, and no competent people that could be, you know, give you some really good advices about that and to make some reasonable solutions. And there are no legal tools, no resource for making the overall urban vision for the whole microregion. This is related with a legal system that every flat has its own owner, and the municipality has no money nor legal tools to create some urban vision for the whole quarter. And the last one is the ideological conflict, because it's very hard to convince people that the quality of life in such a district can be not worse than living in the old town. It can be as much attractive as it is in the city center. Then we were talking about the vision. How can we perceive the reconstruction of this modernist housing? So at first, we have to shift our mindset and to think that beautiful is not only about beauty. Beautiful is sustainable and functional. We cannot separate those three values. Then we have to strengthen the architectural identity of those districts, so it creates identification and love by inhabitants. And then we have to create a renovation vision that would suggest an attractive environment as an alternative to the charm of the old town and suburbs. And here in my presentation, you can see the pictures that are pictures of some districts that were built in 50s, 60s, and 70s in Lithuania. And this one in particular had one of the highest urban and architectural prizes in Soviet Union those times. What are the tools to aim for that vision that we want? So we think that a holistic research should be implemented before renovation, and with holistic we mean technological, aesthetical. We have to analyze the cultural relationship, we have to talk with the community, and so on. So this holistic research should be done before any project. Then we propose that architectural competitions could be a tool to achieve the highest quality of the renovation. And of course, any renovation should result with some added public functions, because we feel that the problem of this housing is that people live like in matchboxes and they don't meet. When these kind of districts were built in Soviet times, you know, they were carrying the ideology that you are living in your flat, but you know, you are just sleeping and eating over there, but you meet in those public spaces, but nobody did that. So it was just a formalism that is not working today. Regarding the aesthetics and the architectural values of these districts, we thought that urban integrity is the priority. So we should start from the design, from the whole to the detail. Start with the urban structure and then go to the windows and balconies. Architectural morphotype is the most important regarding the renovation, so we should keep the original morphotype. Then a preserved system of public spaces should be there in the renovation projects, because public spaces, sometimes they have really nice traditions of local communities and they are working, so we should keep them. And it's very important to balance public and private spaces. I mean, in some courtyards, you have those small gated plots where only one family can use and no other So we should somehow create a balance between that. Architectural identity should be designed through the details. Of course, we cannot preserve the whole image if we want a serious renovation of the building, but sometimes the details are the ones that create some spiciness and taste of the architecture. Then inclusiveness and education of inhabitants is very important. Of course, demolition is the last choice. And I think that the lecturers of today will also agree with that. And the last detail is that we propose not making new plots inside the micro rayons inside those districts in order not to disrupt the original urban structure. And finally, our idea for a pilot project, we suggested to take one of those districts built in Soviet time, the one that I've mentioned before that won the prize. It's called Lazdynai. It's located in Vilnius. And to implement those principles of holistic renovation in that pilot project that could be called a laboratory of holistic renovation. Of course, it's you know an utopian solution because of the private private property that we have. And also we propose some guidelines for the renovation, some general guidelines. So a research, as I mentioned, that should be we should make a research on artistic, historical value, expectations of the inhabitants, technical and economical potential. We should work on pilot projects that could be in situ participation and collaboration labs, sustainability, experimental solutions, and architectural experiments in real situation. Then we suggest that our government should create a renovation competence center that would take care of communication, education, competence improvement for specialists, institutions, communities, inhabitants, and citizens. And then we suggest to do project mapping with scope, stakeholders, steps, and responsibilities, and of course, to find out new financial mechanisms. So here I just made a presentation of our good intentions. So far, we don't have any pilot projects to show you. But I hope step by step with all those events that we have, international ones, sharing our experience among ourselves, you know, rising up ideas. I think that in couple, maybe not in couple, maybe in 5 years, we in Lithuania, we have to show you something maybe equally to what we have in Amsterdam or in Bordeaux. So now I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you very much for
Thank you, Ruta. Congratulations. It was an excellent presentation. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose Luis. So I think that we are a little bit late, so I will give a floor to a next speaker, which are two speakers, my colleagues from Latvia, Dagnija Smilga and Niklaus Spegle from Ether Architects Office, and they will have their own presentation and they will talk about situation in Latvia. So Dagnija, Niklaus, the floor is yours and 30 minutes are yours as well. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. And before we start, perhaps it was not raised enough. Clearly, we are totally opposed to the war in Ukraine, and we are doing everything we can to support Ukraine, and we stand with Ukraine with all possible tools that are in our disposal. But while we are doing that, we are not being paralyzed, and we are carrying on also with our works. So I hope this is clear, and I give the floor to Dagnija now.
Okay, hi everyone. Now I'm not sure if you see me in the screen or you see Niklaus. Is it okay? We will talk today about the research project called Riga X and focus on housing. Riga X is a unique and innovative research collaboration between think tank CERTUS, that are data analysts, so socio-anthropologist Viesturs Celmiņš, Bureau of Riga City Architect, and us, Ether Architects. So our collective aim is to boost Riga's long-term competitiveness and sustainability by developing an optimistic, forward-looking yet realistic vision for Riga's urban development over the next decade. So it's all about trying to find the Riga kind of strategy for Riga to become a livable city. And in context of housing, we believe that it's more complex than just housing issues. Therefore, we're actually looking at measures in a greater context. And first part of our presentation will be on 4 economic drivers that we believe would, push the city's growth. So they are culture, education, ICT sector, and housing. Here you can see in the slide, the last 30 years, Riga actually has changed from a place to live towards a place to work. And the inhabitants of the city, the amount of inhabitants has decreased. And it's projected to be decreasing. So for example, here in the context, you can see Riga is decreasing, whereas we always like to compare with Tallinn and Vilnius. They have a growing population in the capitals. And it's actually the only capital in the Baltic Sea region that continuously faces population loss. And why so? During the last 20 years, more than a third of the inhabitants have left the city. So it's around 38.5 thousand people, that is 34% of the inhabitants. And with the existing scenario, kind of the prediction is that in the next 10 years, 25,000 more would leave. And the other interesting aspect is that 72% of Riga population lives in multi-story housing blocks, which are all like similar. And between 2000 and 2020, population in Riga suburbs has grown 20%. So basically people from center is just continuously moving out to the suburbs. And why? So basically, why so? Life in suburbs offer larger living space. In the center, average space is something like 56 square meters, in suburbia 92. They can have more green space, more safe environment, accessible primary education, and social benefits that altogether gives a higher life quality. And compared to Riga, so does really, so basically when we compare with other European cities, Copenhagen, Oslo, and Vienna, they are actually not only livable, but also compact. So what we're interested in looking at Riga potentially as a compact city, because of course, as we know, as more compact you are, less costs on infrastructure. So it basically we would need to reduce the costs on infrastructure expenditure. And here you can see, for example, Oslo, how they do and achieve livable cities, working with the waterfront, all these values of the key for livable city. Copenhagen, infrastructure, velo infrastructure, and so on, which is not only as treated as infrastructure, but as a great public space. And Vienna as an example for a great housing with good outdoor spaces. And here's an overview of Riga, where we analyzed a kind of a population density in 2019, where you can see the density is kind of very scattered, and the characteristics of today is that as I mentioned before, the population is concentrated in multi-story housing blocks, and the city center is empty. And you can see outside the multi-story blocks are higher bars in the graphics. And basically, it's a kind of a shrinking city, a low density city, far distance to social services, and high infrastructure costs per 1 square meter. This is what's generated in this case. And Riga X vision is talking about a compact, livable city. And we identified a space which is closed, which is kind of around the Riga city center. You can see in the image is the yellow bars. And this is kind of, in our opinion, the unused potential in the spatial structure of Riga. It's the railway belt and all the adjacent industrial territories, where already now we could, by researching, we could see the main developments already start to happen around this space. So basically it's a space next to the city center with the potential to be densified and developed as mixed-use neighborhoods. Riga X vision, so compactness as a precondition for livable Riga. In these graphics, you can see the top one is a section, kind of an abstract section of Riga, how it's now, and you can see the yellow parts, the empty parts are the railway belt, and on the outskirts, the Soviet housing blocks, and in the city center, and the city center is in the middle. So what we propose is that the big amount of the housing block inhabitants we could host also in the yellow part, in the railway belt, which out of an abstract calculation, 10 square kilometer territory with 200,000 inhabitants, 80,000 housing units, and that generates around 200 people per hectare population density, which is similar to Vienna city center. And it's not that we are proposing to move the inhabitants entirely from the outskirts from the blocks to the center. However, due to the necessity of renovation of the housing blocks, people will need to go somewhere, and also because these housing blocks has much smaller space per inhabitant. So anyway, we need to find more space. And here you can see the main 4 components of our research, which is these 4 development drivers that has the potential to foster territory development. So the first one is higher education and innovation. The second one is ICT, information communication technologies. The third, culture economy, and the fourth is housing. And an overview of the map of the city. In the middle is the river Daugava and Riga on the both sides. And you can see the cluster, you can see the yellow belt, where we kind of say that all these drivers has a potential when they're clustered smartly together in the territory. So for example, ranging from territory that has a potential in housing, recreation and culture, up to business, housing and sports, as well as territory for innovation, testing, living. Much more diversified culture program, activating public open space, digitalization of the events, and in general making the big culture more accessible and activating the outside public space of the city center. Then the culture in the railway belt offers kind of could offer new places. For example, Black Box Theatre, where we could invite international theatre groups, which is currently not possible in Riga, and so on. And culture in multi-story housing blocks is more related to pop-up culture events, schools, libraries, and small culture centers, and activating those. And regarding the research and development, so unfortunately, again, a graph where Latvia has that shows that our percentage of the investment, our percentage of the GDP in investment of research and development is one of the lowest in European Union, and of course, therefore, our innovation index is one of the lowest. So this poor investment leads to a kind of a low innovation level, which should be increased. And looking at it spatially, we kind of actually think that the education sector and technology sector should be combined and created in a kind of one technology ecosystem. And for example, just a couple of spatial things, that Riga City railway connection has a kind of a potential between airport and the central station, then a 5G network between Knowledge Mile, which is the on the left side of the city center is the knowledge cluster of Riga, and satellites of biomedicine network, and potentially a kind of a drone corridor that creates innovative basis for testing future technologies, including important material and substance, for example, organs delivery. So one side of Riga, on the right side of the map, above a bit, you see the technological cluster. On the left side is more the education cluster, and it all combined in one smart network could have exchange of knowledge. And again, to conclude, it's all about the smart clustering of and strategic location of right programs combined with housing, culture, innovation, and education.
So I will go a little bit more into housing. Housing stock in Riga is actually in a critical condition because most of it is built more than half a century ago, and out of around 6,000 multi-story buildings, only very few are renovated. In terms of ownership, you also see that very small part is a rental housing sector. It's mainly privately owned, also during the privatization process. But we have also an issue that approximately 20% of housing, and that amounts to 64,300 housing units, they have this split property condition, which means that in some areas like Purciems, microrayon, this multi-story district, you see that some of the large buildings are actually cut by land ownership below. So they are forced to pay rent to the historical owners. And this is a kind of locked in situation where development is really difficult of those buildings. In terms of living space, Riga has 32 square meters per person, but these micro districts have only 20.6 square meters, which is very low, while there's a big potential of green space, actually 42 square meters per resident in Riga. So we have this kind of contrast situation with very congested apartments, but a lot of untapped potential around. Who lives in Riga? We see that also the inhabitant structure is changing a lot, and that requires a bigger diversity of housing that is also better suited for people who are living without children, which is predominantly the 75.5% majority of the people. This is perhaps one of the most striking graphs while we were analyzing the housing data, which shows that 38% of Riga's inhabitants are a kind of missing middle class, which is too poor to afford the mortgage, but at the same time they do not qualify for social housing support. So these 38% of inhabitants do not have access to a decent quality housing. And this is the reason why we believe that there needs to be also institutional change. And we call this abstractly the Housing Competence Center, who could deal with exactly the topic of affordable housing, both as rental and private property owned. And this would address really young families with children, police, nurses, etc., people who need urgently need access to high quality housing. And the functions of this Housing Competence Center would be a kind of audit of current housing stock. They need to develop strategy, competitions, innovative pilot projects, and be involved with urban planning, but at the same time work with residents of the neighborhoods. It's a lot of social work that needs to be done, and they need to bring the residents together with economic instruments that are available for development of housing. And in Riga X project, we very clearly identify three zones of the city with three different strategies. That is Riga Center, the railway belt, and the micro districts. The issue is that so far we have been only having one financial instrument, and that is to do with increasing the energy efficiency. And we think this is absolutely wrong, because polystyrene, it reduces energy bills, but it doesn't improve the living environment in those districts. And we believe that there needs to be a new set of values for improvement of Riga housing stock. And all of these values should be new financial instruments. We classify them under three categories. It's architecture, environment, and social resilience. In architecture, we are talking about spatial flexibility, that the plans and sizes need to be really different and adaptable. There needs to be livable outdoor space, terraces, balconies, verandas, live and work options with studios, ateliers, and workshops. Collective communal space is very important in these neighborhoods, like babysitting rooms, collective kitchens, apartments for guests, workshops, saunas. All of these spaces are extremely important. And as well, we are thinking about innovative technological approach. There are some cases where, for example, contemporary timber construction materials that we have could be provided by the local economy, and that could work really well together with the new development of housing. And energy, of course, is part of it, but it's definitely not the #1 point in architecture here. Environment, again, playgrounds, green courtyards, bicycle sheds, picnic tables, places for sport and recycling, mobility, shared mobility, proximity to regular public transport, and cultural vibrancy, access to public services, culture, education, and well-being, extremely important, as well as digital environment, energy, community management, and other functions, contemporary art, especially in public space, community involvement, and identity building of the neighborhoods, and social resilience. So social mixing, creating inclusive communities in the context of economic pressure and ethnic diversity, neighborhood involvement, participation in all inhabitants, especially socially weak and low income groups in neighborhood processes, and the building culture or Baukultur. It's really about educating people about quality that architecture can bring, environmental sustainability, and resident participation in the process of creating and maintaining the environment. So this is our proposal for new values. Then the strategy is focused on 3 parts, and in one sentence, it's complex renovation of housing in micro-rayons. I will explain what we mean by complex. Housing and courtyard regeneration in Riga city center, and new housing clusters in the railway belt. So for the city center, we ask how to reanimate the housing stock, which is here in the historical area, avoiding its gentrification. And we believe that it's to do with such architectural approaches as special rules for ground floor public use of buildings, roof transformations and gardens, as well as freeing courtyards from the cars and giving them back to the residents. The environment is the green courtyards with all the functions that I mentioned before, shared mobility options, activation of streets and squares, as well as educational aspects of the building culture. And social resilience is extremely important in the Riga city center, because that is key to avoid gentrification, and it's the provision of affordable and social housing in the city center and not really far in the outskirts. We also have some examples from Helsinki and from Oslo, which are related to our ideas. Now, if you go to the micro rayons and what we mean by complex housing, so I would say that all of this research project, you could define it as holistic, but the approach of housing renovation in the micro districts is really, we think it needs to be complex, because it needs to answer the question how the housing structure that is introduced 70 years ago could deliver technological, ecological, and social innovation. And to answer that, of course, it's one part in architecture to really create these unique pilot projects, because actually there are not that many in the world that we are seeing as the good examples, but it's a very big part of it is how they come to be organized and how they come to be realized, because it requires involvement of the city, it requires involvement of the state with some financial tools, and it requires, we think, this additional institution like this center that brings together the residents, giving them the explaining what is possible and organizing these new pilot projects. And we believe that the architecture-wise, we definitely need to increase square meters of living space per one resident in these neighborhoods. In terms of environment, again, it's about access to transport, mobility, gradual regeneration of the common spaces, and very important is also construction of buildings while maintaining environmental qualities. So we believe that the micro districts need to have a mix of buildings, also new ones, which offer a different kind of apartments, and that could create actually this social resilience more, that there's more social mixing of people with different income levels, and there's also higher quality housing to rent and buy available in these areas. There are some examples which I'm sure you are familiar with already, and if we go to the final part, it's the clusters in the railway belt, and the railway belt needs to answer the question how many new homes can become part of the city with high livability and create a new identity for neighborhoods. Notice also that the yellow belt is between the city center and the micro districts, so it also works as a activator in between that is stimulating the entire city. So we think that this is actually a huge potential to combine living and working functions, innovative technologies, and energy approaches. We believe that there is a possibility to also reanimate some of the industrial ensembles which are on these brownfield post-industrial sites. And we think that this is really a possibility for a kind of light production to come back, light industry to come back into the city. So we think that these areas could be active all year round, all 24/7 hours a day, that they are never just sleeping districts, and they have a high cultural vibrancy. So there is the culture in here, cultural aspects, and there are aspects of these economic drivers like IT and education sectors, which are already very active in Riga and showing a big potential. This also allows to create some test beds, even tech sandboxes for testing different technologies. And here would be really innovative place to pilot some housing cooperatives. So as we know, in Germany, they're called Baugruppe, or collective cooperatives in Switzerland or Austria. So we think that this is a perfect place to do that. As I mentioned, the timber is local driver of economy. We have some examples from Berlin that are these Baugruppe buildings developed by communities. So to conclude, this is our drawing of Riga with three very clear strategies for three parts. We are not kind of ignoring other parts. We are just highlighting those parts that we think are key and more important and have more potential than others to make really this image and kind of make that image of a livable city a reality one day. Thank you for the attention.
Congratulations, excellent presentation.
Thank you, Dagny and Niklas. I am very happy to see and to hear that Lithuania and Latvia are on the same page regarding, of course, the current situation that is not very optimistic, but still with the ideas, we are really on the same page. And I really hope that that this conference is the start of our maybe future collaboration. I would be very happy to continue sharing the ideas and to share the expertise. Thank you, and we will move to the next presentation. I will ask you to stop to share the screen, and I will share mine. So the next presentation is, I would say, is also one of the keynote presentations of today. Of course, when we were starting to organize this conference and we were discussing with Olena that she would make a presentation, the world was different. And right now, I think that this presentation will change the whole discourse of this conference and the view on the topic. So, and I am really, really happy and thankful to Olena and Arkady that they agreed to participate in our conference, knowing that they are probably busy emotionally and mentally with many other issues that are happening right now in Ukraine. So thank you very much for being here, dear Olena and dear Arkady. And I am sure that this is not the end of our collaboration and sharing the ideas, but today we really are eager to know what is happening in Ukraine, what are probably, I know that Ukrainians, they are sure that the war will end with a victory of Ukraine. We are sure of that as well. and it's a high time to start thinking about how will we deal with all the legacy of war, and how can we create an opportunity of quality living for Ukrainians after the war. So Olena and Arkady, the floor is yours. I am stopping sharing my screen and my colleague will share your presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you, dear Ruta. Thank you, dear colleagues. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mariusz, for helping to show presentation. And thank you, UIA, for your support and help in our struggle against Russia. Please correct the view, because do you hear me? Yes, okay, that's good. Next, please. Do you know that on February 24, Russia launched a brutal war against Ukraine? The Russian army is waging war against civilians, destroying homes and killing children. 25,000 families lost their homes. 6,800 houses were destroyed or damaged, and more than 2 million persons were internally displaced. Only in Kharkiv, almost 1,300 multi-story residential buildings, 70 schools, 54 kindergartens, and 16 hospitals were destroyed. In Mariupol, 90% of housing was damaged, and half of which cannot be restored. Next, please. And next, please. And the enemy is destroying residential neighborhoods, hospitals, schools, architectural monuments, entire cities. Such cities as Chernihiv, Volnovakha, Irpin, Bucha have almost completely destroyed buildings. Next, please. Next, please. And do you know that the war is continuing? So how to rebuild so many destroyed houses? Ukraine already has a bitter experience of post-war reconstruction and housing construction for migrants. Next. The first large-scale restoration began immediately after World War II, when only Kyiv were destroyed on 70%. Next, please. Until the end of 80s, Ukraine completed and rebuilt cities destroyed in World War II. Prefabricated houses, which allowed the construction of economic buildings at a rapid pace, then came to the aid. Next, please. Later, in 1986, the Chernobyl disaster forced thousands of people to become displaced. Then, in short time, the task to relocate a large number of people from the affected area was solved. Next. Next, please. Then a lot of work was done, before, please. Then a lot of work was done in a very short time. The basic principles were as follows. Construction of new settlements on the basis of urban concept for each one, with the formation of all necessary functional zones. Then creation of complex project groups that worked on the construction sites until their completion, carrying out constant outer supervision. Then simplification of technology and sequence of urban planning schemes, control over social content, use of standard projects of housing, schools, kindergartens, shops, communal constructions, engineering objects, with binding on construction site according to the simplified schematic master plans. Thank you. Next. But now the destruction of our cities is much more brutal and powerful. Therefore, after this war, we will not only talk about the reconstruction of affordable housing, but again about the new accelerated construction of cheap mass housing to resettle people who have lost their homes. In our opinion, post-war construction will consist of several stages and directions. At first, detailed inspection of the damaged housing, load-bearing structures, engineering networks in terms of their suitability for further operation. This work should be carried out in short time under the guidance of experienced engineers of architects. If the house has minor damage, it is possible to reconstruct it with the obligatory replacement of engineering equipment, windows, installation of facades, creation of public spaces, superstructure of extension of balconies. This should be a comprehensive reconstruction with the surrounding area. Next, please. If the house is damaged in such a way that it cannot be restored, then the question is of its alternative replacement arises. Hundreds of thousands of families will need new houses after the victory. The rapid provision of housing for those in dire need will obviously be addressed through the technology of prefabricated modular construction of temporary structures from blocks, containers, or from linear and flat prefabricated elements, or from a combination of both. But at the same time, we need to address the problems of building more long-term and comfortable house. Next, please. Let us see some examples of reconstruction of existing objects from foreign practice. Next, please. This is a reconstruction of former soup factory in Brussels. Social housing Savonnier, Heymans, includes studios, 1 to 6 bedroom apartments, loft, duplexes, and maisonette. Next. Next, please. Next is a labor housing renovation. It was the reconstruction of existing residential complex, which received additional public spaces, green technologies, and new balconies. This picture you see Square Vitru in Paris. Atelier du Pont suggested adding balconies and completely remodeling the architecture of the facades. The balconies are suspended from the roof. Interesting that this new scheme was installed without using no cranes or pods. Next. Various methods of reconstruction of prefabricated houses are used in Germany. Expansion due to the completion of balconies, lowering the height with roof terraces, dividing along blocks into parts. Next. So the methods of reconstruction of residential buildings can include changing the constructive scheme or not, changing the construction volume by extension, changing the plan dimensions, changing the appearance of facades by balcony of facade system. Next. Next, please. We have now some specific proposals from Ukrainian engineers for the rapid repair of destroyed panel of frame monolithic housing. Next, please. It is only idea, but it can be made just on the place. Such kind of repair building in situ. Next, please. Prefabricated temporary modular construction can made from block containers or small panels. Then it matters only the presence of modules, the speed of assembly and disassembly, and the possibility of reusability. Ukrainian architects propose various types of temporary housing. Please. Here is proposal of by architect Slava Belbek called Dignity No Matter What, which creates usual and healthy lifestyle and decent conditions even in the temporary residence. Main constructive principles are modularity, scaling possibility, and flexibility. Social principles are dignity at first, the socialization and comfort. Next, please. Next, please. Speed, budget, and resources are the main points for realization. Next, please. Modification of residential modules are shown on this picture. You can see residential, public, kitchen, and sanitary, and its combinations. Next. This modification allows to combine 5 types of sections. Section 1 is family type section. Next. Section 3 and 5 have common sanitary blocks. Next, please. Next, please. And these perspectives give an idea of appearance of this temporary housing. Next, please. Different combinations of sections allow to quickly build a temporary settlement up to 8,000 people. The structure scheme is a wooden frame. Next, please. Another offer from loft office is two-level sleeping block. Next, please. Another type of modular folding housing based on triangle offers the car studio from Odessa. Their units are simple, made from local available materials, partial recycling. They do not need to attract special vehicles. Authors promise minimum energy consumption and minimum emissions into the environment. And this temporary housing may transform later in 5-10 years into country hotels of holiday village category. Next, please. Dmitro Aranchi Architects presents universal multifunctional blocks for housing, mobile offices, and public institutions. Such modular can adapt to different functions. Next. There are 3 ways to further use modular elements. Further reuse of modules for other function, reuse of component of modules for other needs, and redesign of materials and elements. All these pathways correspond to the concept of cradle to cradle. Next, please. The prefabricated construction industry takes many forms, from the production of small-sized flat elements of factory production to large-scale volumetric blocks of full factory readiness. One of the main requirements for the design of industrial construction is modularity, which in turn requires the use of methods of unification and standardization of design solutions at all stages of design. Repeatability of building elements is a necessary condition for the application of industrial methods in construction, which is especially effective for mass housing. Next, please. Panel construction technologies are widely used throughout the world in this day, especially for the construction of mass housing. Next, please. The simplest well-established technology in the world is large panel housing. The dimensions of cassette or bench products are well suited for the parameters of social apartments. Next, please. Next, please. By creating project of apartments with flexible planning, with standardized areas of social housing is not relevant. Next, please. The location of the construction site is from proximity to existing sites and cities, as well as the availability of infrastructure will have a great importance. Variability and types of elements must be determined by calculation. Next, please. It is possible to erect quickly both volume block buildings and large panels with application of volume blocks and only a large panel. Next, please. Next, please. Constructive and planning system Nové Místo, offered by my co-author Arkady Peker, propose options for combining different types of block sections, 9 and 4 and 5 story. Next, please. Next, please. Next. Type of public buildings and housing that can be built from prefabricated units are very different. Next, please. House building plans will necessary for the construction of such mass housing. Existing high capacity house building plans remained almost only in Kyiv, but the main volumes of construction will be the center, south, and east of Ukraine. It seems that today the most efficient are low capacity plants from 50 to 100,000 square meter on area per year, which can be located within a few hours of transport accessibility from potential construction areas. Next, please. To equip these plants, will need the help of foreign companies specializing in the development, manufacture, and supply of relevant technological equipment. It is also possible to adopt factories of reinforced concrete structures. Next, please. Option of arrangement sections of such panel houses are very different. You can see many versions of facades. Next, please. The cassette principle embedded of the formwork design demonstrates a number of advantages. Technologically simple and labor-intensive production process. The quality of the surface of both sides of the products is identical to the quality of the formwork surface, and therefore it is possible to use it for the construction of walls and floors. Compactness of a design in combination with high productivity. Possibility of processing of concrete with various characteristics thanks to use of highly effective system of consolidation. Low energy consumption due to the optimal use of hydration heat in the process of hardening concrete and the possibility of efficient heating of the formwork without excessive heat loss. Next, please. Next, please. Scheme of technological cycle of this plant. Next, please. Scheme of production shop. Next, please. So the requirements for implementation of this system are the following: to adopt a state program that will provide financing for design and construction work, allocation of land for mass construction, determine necessary production capacity and regions of their location, involve foreign companies specializing in the development, manufacturing, and supply of technological equipment, develop a series of residential buildings for reuse with the latest achievements in energy saving. In parallel, to adjust the master plans of cities with the allocation of sites for mass construction, design and build external networks, road infrastructure in areas with mass construction, conduct inspections of damaged buildings to determine the possibility of their construction, develop reconstruction project based on modern technology, and conduct tutorials and technical supervision. Next, please. To conclude, I want to say that design decision of affordable housing should be universal, easy change of function of the first floor from housing to public, autonomy of each housing unit, universal urban planning solution for quarter size, which will allow many design bureaus to link their unique development simultaneously in several settlements. Temporary construction should be integrated into city life. In mass housing for migrants should be a mandatory share of hostels, dormitories for students, townhouses, public buildings, and housing for sale, a variety of typologies, and a discount when buying with government support. Only the mixing and coexistence of different layers of society together produce a sustainable community. The effective population density of the city starts from 1,000, 2,000 people per square kilometer. The lower the density, the lower the likelihood of high quality and sustainable public transport. Mass housing for migrants is first and foremost an opportunity for existing cities, not their problem. And Ukrainian architects are ready to generate brave ideas and many interesting concepts to implementation. We need only financial and managing help in renovation of our cities. And of course, we believe in our victory, and we thanks to your support. Thank you very much. Next, please.
Thank you, Elena. Congratulations. Very good presentation. Of course, the challenge is enormous, especially for temporary housing, next step in the near future. But I hope the war finished soon and we can start giving a lot of ideas. I'm sure Ukrainian architects have a very great creativity and talent, you know, to develop very good options. Congratulations, Olina.
Thank you, Jose Luis.
Thank you, Alina and Arkady. From our side, that's the spirit. I really admire your presentation because you are looking forward to the optimistic future. And you know, while we are talking here in the conference about the existing housing and saying never demolish, you have totally different situation. There are some people came that are demolishing everything, and you will have to rebuild your cities from the scratch. So somehow you are in the situation of creating a new modernism, or I'm not sure what would be the name. But as a council member of UIA and also Architects Council of Europe, I can promise that you will have the support and collaboration from the global community of architects. And I hope that we will contribute to the implementation of your ideas, and we will empower your teams with expertise and also hands. So I'm really looking forward to the near future, and glory to Ukraine and Slava Heroyam.
Thank you, Ruta.
Thank you, Ruta. Slava Ukraini. Glory
Slava
to
Ukraini.
Ukraine.
All the
Дякую.
support from the International Union of Architects, Alina, all the support.
So thank you very much to our
Thank you.
Ukrainian colleagues. And we will move to the next presentation after, it was kind of shocking to see the the presentation of Olina and Arkady, but let's get back to the good examples that we have that are not that shocking in a bad sense, but probably we can also use that knowledge for rebuilding cities in Ukraine and also to adapt some principles when talking about the modernist housing renovation in other countries. So let me present you the next presentation by an architect, Xander Vermeulen-Vincent, and he was part of the team who on 2017 won the Grand Prix of Mies van der Rohe Prize, the European Prize for Contemporary Architecture, for the renovation of the flat Kleiburg. It was a modernism housing block in Amsterdam, and I must say that it was the first time when the Grand Prix of Mies van der Rohe was given to a renovation of a housing block. So we are curious to hear your presentation, Dirk Sander. The floor is yours.
Thank you very, very much. It looks like a bit, with the words from coming from the Baltic states and from Ukraine, it feels a bit, almost a bit decadent to sit in the calm and tranquility of Amsterdam here and give the presentation from here. All my best wishes and support from the Netherlands to you there. I'm going to quickly share with you some thoughts that are coming from our work on Kleiburg, but more in general, let's say the post-war housing stock we have in Holland and what I'm still working on there. We worked on Kleiburg in the period of 2011 until 2017. That's the project you see here in the background. And we're still working on the improvement in sustainability of housing blocks throughout Holland from the post-war period. Much of them still social housing, much of them still in use. Most of them are renovated with people still living in them, with very efficient renovation procedure, making most specifically the energy efficiency of the building better. Kleiburg was a much more, let's say, serious project in the sense that we were able to change a lot more than just some glass, but in the same way, it was also very modest in what we did. And that's a thing that I would like to address in the next half an hour. I'm not going into this I'm not going into a very technical aspects of renovating these post-war housing blocks. I'm also not going really into the heritage of these buildings, but the kind of historic cultural value of them. I would like to more, let's say, on the legacy that these buildings gave to the cities in Holland, but throughout Europe, throughout the world, actually, and how we could deal with this legacy, especially in an optimistic way, in the sense that what they have brought us, what they're still bringing us, and how we can bring this legacy into the future. This is the kind of the showcase. This is Kleiburg, the 400-meter long block sitting in the Bijlmermeer, post-war urban extension of Amsterdam to the southeast. And it was kind of the most extreme, big-scale development of the Netherlands of modernist housing. 100,000 inhabitants would live in 40,000 housing units built in a couple of years. And when the first residents came to move into the Bijlmermeer, you had this, you see from the images, from the people dressed, the architecture of the car bringing those people, and the building behind it. There's this kind of mismatch between the people living there. They were really brought into what the avant-garde architects of the time were thinking was going to be the city of the future. It was ahead of its time. And the interesting thing is that I think a general question that could be questioned is, was the architecture actually ever on time? Has there ever been an architecture that really was ambitioned to be an architecture of the new city, the new ways of living, or did the architecture and society grow together into this contemporary city that we see today. And when we're going to renovate it, we're going to make it new again. And I think the ambition is maybe to finally, in a way, make these buildings fit the time and the society and the city that we're living in, which I think is an interesting question. The Bijlmermeer was a big part of an urban extension from the 60s, 70s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Most of them, by the way, based on plans that were already made in the 1930s to extend the city of Amsterdam. And if you see the post-war city of Amsterdam, which was effectively the 19th century city with a couple of small additions, and you see where we were in 1975, then there's this incredible addition to the city. So the modernist housing added to the city and also used the existing historic city as a kind of a linking pin. It really needed the historic city in order to work. It was never really a city on itself. It was always an addition to the city. So instead of Le Corbusier's big plans, which kind of course, were the kind of the most utopian examples maybe of this new way of thinking about housing, the Bijlmermeer was not a replacement of a historic existing fabric, but it was built in the middle of nowhere on agricultural land, which was actually a reclaimed former lake. You can see in the bracket, it was just completely disconnected from the city, kind of convenient tabula rasa, without historic remnants, without existing communities, without all the difficulties that make actually working in the city so challenging from an architectural and also social and economic point of view. And this was deemed was meant to become the city of the future. The kind of most perfect example of all the, let's say, scientific knowledge, and scientific is of course very relative in this sense. The kind of scientific knowledge about urbanism and architecture would bring this city of let's say, the perfect place to live. And most of it, almost all of it, was going to be housing. And I think that's a kind of an interesting thing, that in the last half a century, urbanism has been about housing of common people. It was not about palaces, about cathedrals. It was not about opera house or theaters. Let's say that the stuff that we make the cities with, the stuff that we make architecture with, is housing of common people, affordable housing for common people, which is, I think, historically quite an exceptional period we've been living in. And I think this is something we've gained in the last half a century that we should try to keep as our focal point as architects. And of course, because it was new, because this new and modern and contemporary, at least what they thought was going to be the contemporary way of living, people didn't know it. So people need to be helped with how to live there. The Intervam system is the system with which Kleiberg was built. They made show houses, not only just as a physical model, just to see how it was built, but also to show with the right furniture how you should live there, what modern ways of living were. People coming from really cramped living places in the city center of Amsterdam were given a kind of a grand new, completely kind of rebuilding of their way of living, and they should be educated in that. And the architects spend a lot of time getting all the kitchen cabinets in the right place and to have the flow in the house working correctly. Everything designed for the people and certainly not with the people. And I think what made Kleiberg and the Bijlmermeer in general such an incredible, powerful example is that and I think it's all thing we're striving for in our time today, is that the welfare state as a political idea, modernism as let's say an idea of space, and the economics of prefabricated concrete, they all kind of merge together in this perfect mix. And I think it's a kind of heroic heritage because of that, because it's such a kind of powerful coming together of all these aspects. And if we're looking at it holistically again, and we look at it in this stage from the political point of view in which we're now, in which, at least in Holland and in many other places, the housing market, as we call it today, is the dominant force, in which ideas of space are pluriform. There is no singular idea of how space should be anymore. And the economics in which, let's say, how we build stuff is mostly driven by what sells well. The marketing of architecture is maybe more important than actually what we build. And of course, we're also coming from a legacy in which architects claimed a lot about how they knew how to live well and how housing should be built and the city should be built, but the scientific knowledge on which this was based was very sketchy at best. There was a lot of belief and a lot of ideas and ideals and I guess also wishful thinking, powerful ideas, very tempting ideas, very seductive ideas, resulting into fantastic architecture we still think today. But how architecture and urban living might mix together was maybe not as self-evident as we would like to think as architects. And a lot of people have blamed kind of the lack of knowledge and also the kind of strange, maybe new ideas about urban living for the failings of a lot of these modernist estates. And also the Bijlmermeer was kind of a problem right from the start. This is an image of a demonstration. Kleiberg is the building to the left, and to the right you see the parking garage that fed all for parking of your car. The neighborhood never really worked, and raises of rent were necessary to pay for the upkeep, which of course led to protests, which undermined the affordability idea of the state, and a lot of degradation, lack of maintenance, criminality, etc. really made the Bijlmermeer quickly into one of the, let's say, the ghettos, the banlieues, all these negative associations that come with modernist housing today, or maybe at least from the last 20 years, were also projected on the Bijlmermeer. And these projects were never beautiful, or never meant to be beautiful in a way. A lot of people say about Kleiberg still, it's an ugly building, and I can't really blame them for saying that, because Kleiberg was never maybe meant to be beautiful. Their beauty lies in its purpose of offering affordable housing, equal opportunity to a lot of people, and turning this idea, this purpose of this housing into a radical aesthetic. Kleiberg was part of a huge plan. As I said, 40,000 housing units, 90% of them high-rise like Kleiberg. This is the entire plan of the Bijlmermeer and the Kleiberg in brackets. Designed not by star architects, men with grandiose egos and grandiose ideas, civil servants at best in a way. Siegfried Nassau to the top, and Fop Ottenhoff, the architect of the Intervan building system with which Kleiberg was built. They were really trying to wring the best results on a grand scale for as many people out of this development, with, of course, a lot of questionable decisions to be made along the way. But the ambition was there, and I think especially right after its construction, it could be well seen as a kind of a fantastic contribution to the living conditions in Amsterdam. But one of the problems, I think, with a lot of modernist housing, and I also saw this in the plans of Riga, and I think this is happening in a lot of it, the ideas that led to this modernist housing are coming from a kind of a supersizing of an idea of urban architecture, starting here with Unité d'Habitation, which was a kind of really solitary building sitting in a kind of lush green landscape, kind of the sculptural volume by Le Corbusier, already added on to and knitted together into a fabric by, for instance, the proposal by Park Hill, which had already 3 times as much units, and then 40 times as much units in the Bijlmermeer. Similar amount of housing types. It's just a kind of a supersizing of ideas, and the economics of this development have chipped away on the quality of a lot of these projects. And we're kind of tempting to only show the kind of heroic and beautiful examples of this modernist housing. For instance, Alt Erla, Lignon in Geneva, Mirail in Toulouse, and the Bijlmermeer, of course, in Amsterdam. But I think these exemplary projects are only, maybe the great 1% we like to look at. But most of the housing blocks are not as good. Unfortunately, especially moving from the 50s to the 60s to the 70s, I think quantity dominated over quality more and more, and I think it would be too simple to just say that these buildings are good just because they have a modernist legacy as their architectural idea. But all of them, despite their architectural and urban quality, they offered high quality affordable housing. With high quality, I mean spacious, light-filled, well-ventilated, affordable housing, large square meters, relatively well-proportioned rooms, an urban architecture without an ego, purpose over aesthetics. The purpose are the aesthetics, and I think this legacy is still a very relevant one, in which a lot of architecture is maybe about different things than the purpose of the buildings, and in which high quality and affordability are very pressing issues in every city in Europe. And the funny thing is that today, the Belfront Tower, the tower which I showed earlier, is now turned into very luxurious condos, very popular on the market. And OMA is using the kind of brutalist concrete architecture as a aesthetic tool to sell high-priced apartments in Stockholm. So what it becomes kind of an aesthetic commodity almost. What happened, strangely enough, and this issue about demolition was already mentioned on. Unfortunately, was because of very unfortunate and bad situation in Ukraine at the moment. But in the Belmarmere, we have demolished 75% of the modernist housing stock, not because of a war, but because of ideological and social interventions that we thought were necessary. And we replaced it by very generic urban infill, row houses, terrace houses. We have a lot in every suburban area in Holland. So the way we dealt, at least in Holland, with the modernist housing stock was about demolishing them and replacing it by something else, instead of, as OMA already tried in the 80s, think about adding on to it, making it more interesting, weaving new and old together, reusing the existing by adding new layers of use and of spatial systems to these neighborhoods. And for me, I think that's what we also did in Kleiburg, and we are still doing in the modernist housing stock that we are working on today. We kind of try to shy away from an evaluation if it's good urban architecture in an aesthetic sense. A lot of it isn't actually. It's not bad, but it's also not particularly good in any way. We try to ask ourselves, how can it still contribute to the city of today in affordability, in the spaciousness, both qualities which are almost impossible to replace if you would take them away and build new again. How much do we have to fix in these buildings? And I think we are very tempted to start to fix aesthetics things by adding architecture to a project, but I think we have to be very critical in what we need to have to fix. Everything that we add to the project is something we also have to pay for, and the residents have to pay for. And issue of beauty, etc. It's not, I think, that really relevant. Does the architecture serve the purpose that it's meant to have in the city? Don't add stuff just because it's aesthetic. Reuse should be a strategy to offer as much to the city as we can with what we have. It shouldn't be a goal in itself. And something which was thought by Kleiburg earlier by Greg Lynn, the architect, the kind of architect, made a proposal in the early 2000s for a 70 million plan to add these kind of almost Baroque facades to the building, with new elevator and escalators, bringing new, let's say, routes towards the building, but also changing the building quite dramatically into this kind of very aestheticized object. And this project was, of course, way too expensive to ever be built. And this was actually the reason why our project could go through, because 70 million was impossible, and anything else was also not possible in the economic crisis. So what to do was the big question that led to our project. Now, Kleiburg, at the time, I'll just go very quickly into what we actually did, because what we did was try to do as little as possible. We offered the housing stock in the building was for us very well usable still, but open for a lot of different ways of living than the architecture initially envisioned. So we were thinking, if we open up the houses itself to different ways of living, to different modes, to living styles, to different family types, the diversity that I think is one of the key challenges and of course qualities also of the contemporary city in a cultural and ethnic, economic sense, and solve everything, let's say, between the front door and the city, fixing the functionalist dogmas, which were about pulling apart traffic flows, cars, pedestrians, cyclists, but for the rest, do as little as possible. Do only what's necessary. So we renovated the facades. We brought in new, more sustainable central ventilation, heating, and electricity. But the rest was left open to the new inhabitants to make their own in their own way, and they did in quite spectacularly different ways, from almost artistic interventions to very modest and down-to-earth interventions to more slick, let's say, generic urban living types, but reflecting the very diverse of economic possibilities and ambitions for people. And our main focal points were on the, let's say, the collective parts of the project, in the way to reconnect the building, because I think that's, for Kleiburg, if you would really have to answer what was really the issue with the project, It's not that it was made from concrete. It's not that it's 500 times the same house in a way. It is the fact that the entire plinth was made out of storage spaces. The original pilotis of Le Corbusier were taken out of the equation, but it was just sitting on a dead plinth of storage spaces without any connection to public space. So we took them away. We reopened the underpasses underneath the building, and we took away the elevators that were added to the building later, adding some nice scar tissue that also didn't work because they were either too cold, too hot, too damp, too moist. The machines were almost broken. So that's what we changed. We opened up the underpasses. We reprogrammed the ground floor with housing and business units. And for the rest, we did as little as possible. We forged new urban relationships between the building and the city, which had of course changed also in the 50 years time. Made the entrances with the grandeur that actually fits the urban gesture of the block. Should I have some? And revisited Siam in a way by reinstating the original ambition in a way. And I think our renovation in a way kind of made it finally what it was originally meant to be. I think that was the last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Xander, for your inspiring presentation, and inspiring not only because of the result, but also I am always admiring that this approach to architectural profession and to what an architect should and could do. So this kind of humble approach that instead of making a landmark, you do as little as possible, thinking not about implementing yourself as an artist, but thinking about the inhabitants and such simple things as the daily economy, for example. So I think that this is where the architect's profession should go further. And I think that the next presentation will also follow this example. I am very pleased to welcome the next keynote lecturer, Christophe Houton, from Christophe Houton Architecture from France, and he was the partner at various projects and also at the Renovation project in Bordeaux, together with Lacaton and Vassal architects. So Christophe, I'm very, very happy to welcome you to our conference, and the floor is yours. Go ahead.
So good morning. Thank you for your invitation, and thanks for all the input you gave this morning, and the project from the previous speaker, from Xander, was very interesting. I know I don't know the place, but I know the work in Toulouse. So it's there's a lot of things to say and a lot of analogy between all the context. I'm gonna propose you a tour in Bordeaux. We did with the team you mentioned. We did the renovation of 530 units in Bordeaux, and you can see on the back of this image. And Bordeaux is a city done a lot. The city center was done in the 18th century. It's a low city. And close to the city now, you are during the 20th century. We have done some modern urban plan. So we did this work with a team. It's Anna Caton, Jean-Philippe Vassal, Frédéric Druot, and myself. But first of all, before to explain the project, I have to tell you that we did before this project, we did a urban plan. It was called 50,000 units, because in Bordeaux, 15 years ago, we start a new line of tramway, of public transport, and the municipality wanted to find a strategy to provide affordable housing with the new public transport and the new public line. So during 5 years, we did work on this strategy with 5 other teams. And our proposal was very simple. It was to say that instead of making new neighborhood or to build a new world, starting from a white page, we have to consider what is all the situation that exist in the city, and to see which one they are the most damaged, or the more where you need to put your effort and the investment. So we did a database with all the collective housing unit. So we've got a lot of cases, and if you zoom into that mapping, you can you can have the layout of the building, the layout of the apartment, and you can understand each situation. So for us, the goal was to say, instead of making new project, we have to consider that we must start from an existing situation with the complexity they've got, and to transform it and to add new units with the existing situation. So all the city can have an update and can have the benefit of the public investment instead of putting all the money in new places. Is what we are doing in urbanism usually. So we define this concept of capable urban situation, and we said that we've got hundreds of situations like this where you can find something very interesting to create a new project and to transform the places. So what I want to say this morning is I'm not using reuse word or this kind of concept. I propose to you to think about the transformation. So it's very clear that you take the things like they are, and you work on it to go on another state. So let's go to the point of the project of Bordeaux. It's so I show you this neighborhood is called Le Granbark. It was done at the beginning of the 60s, and it was the first suburbs of Bordeaux in the 60s, and now it's very close to the city center. You can see the 18th century city who is going through. It touch the Granbark urban plan. So the Granbark is very simple. It's a little bit brutal as an organization, but it's very efficient in terms of strategy, because they said we can have a little bit of footprint to create like a park and to have a green area on the floor, and so we can have a high-rise building, and that's why it's called the Granbark. So this is the building we were working on. So there is 3 buildings. It's 225 units each, and it's 15 level, 15 floor. And on the right, you've got a small building. It's 10 floor, and it's 80 buildings. So, you know, it's this project is dealing with the demolition, because these buildings were supposed to be demolished. The municipality wanted to demolish because they are ugly, because of a lot of reasons. And the problem is, when you start from this point of view, this picture I'm showing, when you are the mayor of the city, you look at the building far away, and you consider, you make your point of view is very simplist, because you said that you call it as a urban form. You say it's a tower, it's a bar, but my point of view, I consider that 530 families are living inside for 50 years. So for me, this building, they did the work, they did the job. So it was very efficient for the people, and at the time they go in. The problem after is, you know, in the IT, we start to renovate and we just do a small painting on the facade, but nothing was done clearly to upgrade and to update the state of this building. So the proposal is very simple. Instead of looking from outside as a urban form, we have to go inside, and considering that each family counts for one. You don't have to consider that it's a big system. It's 530 worlds, all different, all marvelous, and you have to start to consider that each situation of each apartment must be updated and transformed. So we did visit all the apartments. I'm showing you some sample of the picture. We are working with a photographer, Philippe Ruot, to do that. It's like an inventory of the apartment, but we did visit all the apartments. We know all the situation of the apartment. And when you are inside, you deal with the story of the people who are living in this building, and they create their own story. They've got a link, affective link with the building and the apartment. They make it better. This building were very functionalist and very systemic in terms of industrialization and providing of housing, but the people tried day by day to make it better, to make it comfortable, and to suit to the project life of the people. So you can see different culture. People are coming from Morocco, for example, in this picture. And so when you deal with that, with the personal story of the people, I think you cannot demolish again the building. It changed completely the mindset. If you are inside with the people, it's quite difficult to take the decision to demolish. If you are from outside, like on the master plan, it's more easier. That's why we have maybe to stop to work with master plan. The feet on the ground are always better. So what we have done, it's very precise. We decide to transform one apartment very precisely. And after you do that, you can consider that you continue to transform the 700 more. So we did remove the small window and the wall facade in red, is drawn in red in this document. And after that, we bring a concrete floor, a prefab concrete floor, 5 meters large in front of the facade. And after that, you can put a sliding glass window to open the apartment to this space. We call it winter garden. And you've got 3 meters large of winter garden. And after you have a new facade. And after you have 1 meter of balcony. So if you look at one apartment, this one is 2-bedroom apartment, okay? So you can see the existing state on the left. It's a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's a very functionalist way of thinking housing. So the problem, it's you are like locked inside the apartment. For example, when you are children, if your mother is running after you, you cannot leave the place. So bringing a new space outside, linked to the old apartment, give you like the space like in a house. I mean that you have an exterior space where you can move, and you can yes, you can move in the apartment in another way, and you create a new link with the landscape and with the climate. So from each room you can go in this winter garden, and this winter garden is very as a structure, it's very simple. The goal is to say that more the structure is simple, more the people can have the freedom to invent the life they want to have inside this housing. It's like in a house, when you've got a garden, you can put all your stuff, your furniture in you. It's a lot of freedom. We need to bring more freedom in the way we live on the daily life in the apartment. So it's very precise, and at the same time, it is very undetermined in terms of space. So the people can, they can choose what they can have to do with that. So this is after the construction. This is a Geneva Apartment, and it's just after the delivering of the winter garden. I don't think I've got the picture, the recent picture of Geneva Apartment, but it's full of plants. It's beautiful now, because after 5 years they implement the life is here, and the life is taking all the space and all the project. I think this project is dealing between the skill of the architecture and the performance of the inhabitants, of the people. It's the meeting of the both, which is very important. If you look at one of the building, you can have the layout of the ground floor and down. And so this is the common area. We create a new elevator outside. Because one thing very important, you have to say that this project was done with the people inside the apartment. We don't move the people during the construction time. It was the building were still occupied during the construction work. So the process was very, how can I say that? yes, it was a big challenge to be able to make this construction with the people in the apartment. So the common area, now we are having a big hall that you can come in both sides of the site. You're having a common level on the layout in the middle, and the last level on the top is the rooftop, because we create also new units on the rooftop of the building. We create like small houses. It's a 2-bedroom apartment, and they are very, very large. So this is the process of construction. Yeah, so you see the clay is putting one floor on the left of the screen, and then the building on the right is already done. This is at the end of the process. So everything changed. Also from the inside, it changed completely the image of the building and the way it's dealing with the city. And this is how we did it. So the floor are prefab, it's concrete prefab, and the fence is already on the concrete floor when we put it. So that means that when we put the floor, the worker can walk on it immediately, because we don't have to build a scaffolding for security reasons, because it's already very safe to be on the new floor. So the extension of the apartment was in fact the scaffolding for the construction time. So, and with that, also with that process, we avoid a lot of to disturb the inhabitants during the process. So on this picture, for example, imagine that the people are cooking and watching TV behind the wall and the window. After putting a floor, we put the pillars like this. They are prefab also. So no machine on the construction site, no noise, no dust, as less as you can. And yes, and after you continue. So we were making one level per day for like one staircase, and it's 5, 6 or 7 concrete floor per day. After putting the floor, you can cut the facade and open the wall of the existing facade to put the window, the sliding glass window. And after you put the facade of the winter garden. So in total, it's 5 days of work for one apartment. This is the old facade. This is the very gentle machine we're using to cut the wall. And just on the back, you can see the temporary wall with protection to avoid the dust to go in the apartment. And you can, yes, this is when the wall was taken down. And you can see that this person is watching TV behind the construction work. So it's a lot of noise during 1 hour or 2 hours. But what is very important is we did one prototype of one apartment during the study of the project. And it was a tool for us to explain to the people what is the result. So they can visit it, they can move the curtain, they can move the window, they can understand exactly what will be the benefit of the project. So people were very nice and kind, because they understood exactly what was the goal and what was the project before we start the construction. Here's some example of winter garden, and also we've got this winter garden is done also for a process of energy efficiency, because instead of putting insulation in the facade, you put 3 meters of air, and that you can live inside. So the concrete floor protects you from the sun in summertime for the summer comfort. And in winter, the sun is going into this winter garden to heat the apartment very efficiently. And you've got different systems to ventilate. You've got curtain to protect yourself from the sun if you need. So we strongly believe that the inhabitants, they've got the expertise and the skill to regulate the comfort and to save the energy. because instead of industrial machine, it's better to trust in the people to assume the energy efficiency. And you can see from this one, we are still in construction in the second building. Also in Bordeaux, the view is fantastic because it's a very low city. So the situation is this building are, I can say, exceptional because you're having a very beautiful view. You are facing south and you get the sun. The climate is very cool in Bordeaux and you can have the benefit of the climate and of the view. And the urban regulation today allow us architects to build a 7-story maximum. So if you demolish this building, you lose the benefit of this situation, which is completely exceptional. I was saying that the life is coming in the apartment and in the winter garden. So you see, it's very dense. You can have the birds, the plants. It's like a garden, and the people are using it very performatively. It's very cool. As you can see the situation and the view. You can see it, maybe it's summertime on this picture. You can see that you are protected from the sun with the extension on the top. And this is the units that we did create on the rooftop, because it was important to say that when you transform, you can add new apartments also. So this building, they've got a lot of capacity to be extended because they were very well constructed. It was very simple and very efficient, the construction at that time. There is a limit, but they've got the capacity to be transformed and to be updated. And this is the new unit on the rooftop, and the situation on the 16th floor is quite amazing. And one thing very important also, you must know that of course it is a social housing buildings, owned by a company, a social housing company, and so we keep the people on the apartment, and they keep also the same amount of rental. The rental price is still the same after the project, even in the rooftop. And to conclude, just to let you know that this project, it was a long story for us because it took a lot of time to study and to construct. It took maybe 2.5 years for the construction. So we spent a lot of time there on site, and at the end we get the European Union Award in 2019. So yeah, we are very proud of that, and of course we want to share this prize with all the people who are living inside, because we do it with them and for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christophe. And I think that your presentation once again proves that the attractiveness of the building lies not in any luxurious architectural details, but in the content and the function that you create over there. And I think that all of us want to make a lot of questions and to discuss further, but we have to hurry, and I think that there will be another opportunities, maybe some workshops that we will organize under the topic. So we will invite you, all of you, to participate once again, and then we will have more time to talk. But right now, let me introduce the last participant of the morning session, who will make a presentation, Paolo Mazzoleni. From Italy, he's a deputy mayor of urban planning of the city of Turin. So Paolo, the floor is yours. The 30 minutes are yours.
Hi, everybody. I will share my presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
Sorry, I'm sharing it. I will retry. Very sorry about this. Can you see it now?
No, not yet. Can I ask my colleague to share your presentation on screen and you just do the presentation? Okay.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Okay. Marius, can you share the presentation of Paolo on the screen?
Yeah, just a second.
Yes, now we see the
I can
presentation.
see now the presentation
Okay,
is sharing.
okay. So
Yes,
perfect.
yes,
Yeah,
it's
sorry.
working.
I just made the same thing 2 times. Sorry. Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me and to share with you some ideas and things we are trying to do. We have seen incredible presentations, so I will go briefly through some of the themes that I wanted to share with you, because we're treated very well by other presenters before me, and also the moving presentation about the crime that was really making us think about the privilege of being here and discussing architecture and city. Personally, as you said, I'm Paolo Mazzoleni. I'm an architect and an urban planner. I work as an architect, been working the last 15 years around the idea of city and how to plan and develop a good city to live in. And we have tried to do this in very different way, by designing, by planning. I also had an experience in our Order of Architects in Milan. And my last adventure, the last thing that happens to me is that I've been called in Turin as a technician to try, let's say, to apport some competence in a new govern of the city. We are here since a few months, so I'm not able to show you things done, because they are exactly as I'm saying, they are just things we are starting to do in this moment. But I will share with you the ideas we are working with and the aims that we are putting on the ground. Turin is, I don't know if you know Turin, it's the 4th city of Italy. It will host in a few weeks the Eurovision, so maybe you know for that. It was an industrial city where the main automotive industries of Italy were, or still are, but they are, as in all the industrial cities, they don't have the role they did have in the past. And this is very close to the themes we are discussing today, because the city is changing a lot. And the modernist neighborhood were built mainly to host the workers of the automotive industry. It's a wonderful city with a very sharp and clear urban shape that is the result of its history, but also of a very good quality of planning in the past. But it has somehow lost its way. It started reinvent itself after the industrial age, but the subprime crisis put a stop in the developing of the city, and they couldn't restart for a lot of reasons. So we are now trying, let's say we proposed a new course for the city, and we are trying now to make, in a way, the city reborn. And obviously the inheritance of the modernist neighborhood is part of this work. What we believe? What is the ground idea where we try to grow our politics for the city? Briefly, I think it's something that is shared with the other presenters, but maybe it's useful to, in a way, state it clearly. We do think that city it's an organism. We can say it's like a tree. It's a place where every single part live and let live the other parts. So it's very important that any politic, any design, anything we do on the city is always taking in account the role of the thing we are managing inside the whole of the city. So I think this could be a way of saying the holistic approach that is in the title of this meeting of today. So as a city, if we conceive the city as a tree, we have to be very careful, no matter the importance, the wealth or whatever of every single part, we have to be very careful when we manage it, because anything we do on a part of the city will affect in a way the city in its own. That's in a way the philosophy of our action. As we all know, I'm saying very obvious things, but this in a way help us going through the things. In all the history of cities, and mainly in the history of modern city, the city has grown by growing. As it may seem obvious, it's grown by conquering new space outside. Now, this is Turin, but I think we can make a map like this on any European city, from the historical center, then the 18th century growth, and then the 20s, then the industrialization, and then the spread of the city. And this has been the growing of the city till the end of the 80s, 90s. And obviously, the modernist neighborhood were a very important part of this growth. And so they've taken away free land from the outskirts of the city, and is now an heritage that we have to manage. Exactly as all the other, I think, European cities from the 90s, we had to maybe a little later than other cities, we have to face the post-40s, the post-industrial paradigm, And so, in a way, for the first time, the city started growing from the inside, and growing on its own areas, converting industrial places, and that's called brownfields, in new living or working spaces. And this has been an enormous change, because after maybe 2000 years, growing and growing and growing, we started reconceiving the city from the inside. And so, as you know, we started trying to build an idea of the city we want. There are a lot of definition and theories. I like the Rogers idea of the urban renaissance, but we can use a lot of them. And we start fixing some aims, some objectives: the sustainability, the walkability, the vibrancy of the city. And this has started being the objective of the politics, or maybe the narration. That depends time to time. We have neighborhoods in Italy, just like in France, or in Germany, in Spain, Holland, and all over Europe. We have made very good new neighborhoods, and very worse, horrible new neighborhoods, depending on how the politics, the planning, and also the investments and the designers could face or not the possibility of really reaching this objective that we are focusing on. So let's say that we know what we want to do. Not always we can do it, but we know what we want to do. And so we start fixing, we start fixing and working in a direction. This is Turin, for example. It's a very interesting park on a former industrial area, with a church, with new neighborhoods. So we have good examples all over our cities. We are not we know that not everything we have done in the last 20, 30 years is that correct. We have made mistakes, we have lost occasions, but we know quite clearly what we want to do. So can we apply the same objectives, the same aims, and try to achieve the same results? Also, in this very particular part of our city, there are the modernist housing, the modernist housing neighborhood. We think we can, but it's very difficult. two presentations we had before mine, made by architects doing this work, were very clear about what are the problems, what are the difficulties, what are the main challenges of doing this, no? Moving people or not moving people, the technicality of the building, the way they were conceived and built, that are similar but different in every country, in every situation. For example, in the Italian situation, we had less prefabrication than in other countries, maybe some more urban attention than in other countries, but in other way, we have very poorly built buildings, for example. So in every situation, we have slightly different problems. And as a matter, I think is much more challenging and difficult than the matter of the reform of the former industrial areas, for example. So it's a very, very complicated issue. There are a lot of architects dealing with that. There are a lot of designers and planners dealing with that. The first thing I think it's to study, and that's what we have done, to study what is already on the table, what is already on the literature, what we do know that could be the way of transforming it. The first act, maybe also this is obvious. I feel somehow to say obvious things, because maybe between us working on this matter, this could seem obvious, but I assure you that, and maybe you know better than me, that when you go outside, you start talking without, let's say, the people working on this matter, obvious things are not that obvious. So it's very important to state things, no? And one of that's very important, and that this kind of transformation is an act of creation. It's a design project. It's something that is not a rule, is not economical, or it's not merely economical, but it's designing. It's a creation. It's a creation of a new opportunity, of a new space, of a new place. And as a creation, has to be treated in planning and in politics. That's very difficult and absolutely not obvious when you start talking with, let's say, normal people or not professionals. So starting from this idea, we try to give a name to this process of creation. I hope you will follow us in this little crazy idea. And that is something that is very important for us to start conceiving a way to put this inside the planning rules of the city. So we ended with the idea of this operation on housing as a kind of bricolage, kind of working. I'll go back on this concept of bricolage, but let's start from the practical, working with the existing, trying to reach at the end the same results we are trying to reach in the whole city. So what we say, the workable city, the comfortable city, the sustainable city, and so on, but on physical objects that are already existing. So we start doing things. We have focused on a lot of projects. We have analyzed a lot of projects all over Europe dealing with this matter that is, as we said, quite similar, besides some difference around Europe, and trying to make a kind of catalog of action that we can do on these buildings. So assuming that it's a design, it's a project, and as a project, every time is different. And as we have seen clearly in the last two presentations, if we have good architects, if we have good designers, we had good results. Looking the problem in the side of let's say ruling it or building politics on it, we need to, in a way, make a catalog of this kind of operation. Also, we make an extensive work about the kind of operation we have observed these design projects are doing, and in a way, focusing on some themes. For example, the ground level. Maybe the ground level was was one of the bigger mistakes place, one of bigger place of mistakes in these schemes, in these modern schemes, no? Because or looking at this let's say, theoretical but not so working idea of piloting, or trying to put a function that didn't survive the market, for example, and so on. A lot of time the ground floor is the problem, or is one of the problem, or is the problem of this kind of schemes. So the best example we have analyzed deal a lot with the ground level, but also the one we have just viewed that were part of our analysis, obviously. On the counterpart, maybe for similar reason, the roof level, it's another very critical point. Let's say maybe the ground level is the more critical, and the roof level is the more rich of opportunities. So another point that is for us very interesting, it's the work on the roof level. Both of them cross a lot with the planning rules, for example, because a lot of time the planning rules, or maybe, I don't know if also in the other countries, but in Italy it's like that, in our cities like that, the planning rules, they are limiting the volumes also in public buildings. And so maybe the opportunity of working on the roof level, maybe also adding something on the roof level, it has problems with the rules. And at the same time, working on the ground floor, that a lot of time means working also with function. It has problem with the monofunctionality of a lot of our rules that are very obsolete, as you can imagine, or maybe it's the same also in other places. A third front of work, a third line of work, it's the facade. We have seen incredible example just now, because due to the way they were built, but also to the way they are changing, the way we use our building nowadays. The facade were really underestimated as a matter in these modernist schemes, and so working on the facade is another point. It's quite interesting because I don't know how it was in your country, but the pandemic, for example, in Italy, put the let's say private open space on the facade back on the top of the needs of the people. No, we were all living inside our house and going on our balcony or whatever we had, or also just sitting on the window, on the bench on the window, was an action of freedom, no? And people restarted talking each other from the window or from the balconies. And so the facade as a part of the city came back, as maybe it was in the past, in Italy was in the past, come back as a very urban place. And so all modern schemes revealed their weakness in this part that always was not, or majority of time was not, object of their project. And then obviously we have the typological issue. Most of the modernist neighborhoods were built, of the modernist building were built with a simplified generic idea of human and of family in particular. No, we have enormous amount of building built with the same typology conceived for a family with 2 children. No, that was the idea. We are mother, father, and 2 children that normally have a male and female. No, it's very schematic, and we have an enormous amount of building built exactly for that. And now our city is made of very a much complex way of living. The family are changing. We have an enormous amount of people living alone, for example. There are people coming from other countries, from other culture, that maybe use space in a different way. And so it's impossible to think that we can still have thousands and thousands of flats, all identical, all responding maybe in a good way, but to a very simplified idea of Western Italian or Western North Italian typical family of 4 people. No? So a pimp of the typological asset of the building, it's another strong problem, and it's another strong challenge. And also in this case, we have rules that doesn't fit. Because also our rules in typology are obsolete, and they are in a way of the same age of these projects. So they are still describing this kind of theoretical optimal flat made of two sleeping rooms and a kitchen and one bathroom and so on. No? And maybe we need something more complex, more flexible, more, and all these things are very obvious to architects. We are dealing with this in our competition, in our schools, in our offices since the last 20 or 30 years. But reality is really far from having this as normality. And also the building themselves, no? The morphology of the building themselves, it's can be an object of a lot of operation. Maybe not, the demolition of all the buildings, but maybe an intervention that can change, reshape, add, subtract. And we have a lot of very interesting examples of all around Europe of this approach. But once more, this approach is not so fitting with our obsolete way of planning and governing the city. So what's the issue? Last of this path of work, also the urban morphology, as we have seen in the last example, the morphology of the modernist, of the modernist neighborhood, it's very connected with a very simple and straight idea, the Athens idea of the monofunctional neighborhoods with just housing and a lot of green and air, and they are wonderful places in a way, but our idea of city, it's much more complicated, and so maybe we have to deal also with the urban morphology, put back the idea of street, for example, of vibrant street and of walkability and so on inside this kind of schemes. So what I was saying, that the point is, we do know, and today was very clear, we do know how to do this. There are very, very good examples all over Europe. The modern schemes are quite similar, or similar enough to learn a lot from other built examples, but at the same time, we are really, or in Italy, we are really far from having this inside our planning. And in general, we have a very, very obsolete way of dealing with the planning and the growth of the city. So we have to start back from how we govern and plan day by day and with perspective our city. One of the bigger challenge we have with our new administration in Turin is that we have to rewrite the general plan. Our general plan is from 95 and was conceived at the end of the 80s. So 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago, and maybe 3 crises ago, it was another city. It was an industrial plan. And so we have to rewrite a plan in a completely different way. And so we are trying to work with some concepts. We are working with the thematism and layerizing the planning to focus in any layer, in any theme, focus on a different issue with all the technicalities of the issue, with all the things that are inside the problem of the issue, and it's also to be more efficient in being multidisciplinary. That is something that is completely absent in our actual plan. That is very design, it's very architectural. No? So we are trying to work on different issues. I've politics for different time. So aims for months, for years, and for decades, and also try to introduce an idea of flexibility. We have a plan conceived 30 years ago that has a very clear mind of how the city must be. And there was no idea that this mind can change in time. No? And so we are trying to conceive a much more complex way of planning the city. Inside this idea, we think we have to put the space also for the renovation of a big part of our city that are the modernist schemes. So for this reason, we choose the word bricoleur. So I will just lose 1 minute on this, but it's a word we love and we use a lot to try to describe our approach. It's taken, as you maybe know, by the book Savage Mind of Claude Lévi-Strauss. In a small part of this very difficult book that I personally love, the French anthropologists use the word bricolage, and so the bricoleur, the guy doing bricolage, as a metaphor of a way of using what he calls the concrete logic in a kind of opposition, if we can say, to this classical scientific approach. No? The idea is that, differently from an engineer that in front of a problem rationally invent a solution for that problem in a scientific way, the bricoleur has a set of tools that are the tools he has in his backyard or his garage, you know? And with that set of tools, try to solve every problem he has. No? And so many times you use something that is not a hammer to hammer, or you use the wrong tool, but you adapt the tool and you make, let's say, you go stage by stage, approximating to the solution with the tools you have. No? And this, because you can invest in a limited set of tools, you can't own any possible tool in the world as a theoretical engineer. And so you invest in a few tools that you believe can help you dealing with the problem you have. No? And so in a way, if we describe the way we face the renovation of the modernist scheme as urban bricoleur, we can imagine that we can, in a way, build a toolbox of operation that we know we can do and try to put them inside our rules, try to put them inside our plans, try to put them inside our politics, and also inside the way we finance our politics. And so give this toolbox to the designer, to the architect, to the planner, but also to the citizen, and just adapt them time by time to solve local problems, but having them described as a toolbox. So the very difficult challenge now is to translate that we have, and we will focus on them in the next months and year, it's to translate this analysis we have made on all these very good examples. We have not so much, but we have some also in Italy, but taken from France, from the Netherlands, and from many other places. Germany, it's the main, but also others, and try to build this toolbox and then to convert this toolbox in rules and plans and practical things inside the way we govern the city, with a very ambitious idea that this toolbox could reach even the urban path or even the urban level. And so in a way, give us tools also to reintegrate the modernist schemes inside the life of the city. And that's very important because a lot of time these schemes host fragile part of the population of the city, the non-wealthy part, the one that has suffered more the pandemic. And so we really need not just to refurbish and renew and redesign and rethink the place where they do live, but also the way these places are connected inside the city as a network, the city as a tree, as we are called before. No? Trying to be fixed on a city with these values that we have described. We like, and we'll end with this a few minutes before the 30 minutes, we believe that the city should be strong. And we do like a word that is anti-fragile, you maybe know that. We have used a lot in the last times the idea of the resilient city, the idea of a city that when it's hit by a problem, can resist the challenge and preserve its qualities. Well, anti-fragile, it's even better. Means that every time that I have a shock, I come back stronger than before. So an anti-fragile city is a city that can survive a pandemic and come back stronger than before, change itself to prevent the next shock. So that's very ambitious, but it's our idea of how we should plan and govern our city to make them not just resilient, but anti-fragile. And I think that this operation, I have very briefly, and sorry for that, and also for my English, described in these 20 minutes, it's a way to make also our modern schemes stronger, resilient, and maybe if we will be able, if we're good in our work, anti-fragile. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Paolo. I think that you have done half of the work that our initiative was meant to do, because we were talking about making a toolkit of the best solutions, and now I can see that the toolkit is almost done. So I really hope that in the nearest future, you will kindly share that toolkit with us, and we will adapt it, of course, to our own context.
Yeah, sure.
Let me ask, because we still have some 10 minutes. So the ones who are still connected, please put your videos on, and we will have a short discussion of 10 minutes, because I would like to use my opportunity to make some questions, including the participants of the afternoon session, because maybe you want to tune in and to share your insights. And I want to ask the first question that it's a little bit complicated. It's not so much about the quality of architecture, but more about governance of the projects. Because we had seen very nice examples how good quality architecture solutions can be implemented. And of course, we can get the impression that renovation in Europe is, it's perfect. But remembering the presentation by Xander, only 2% of modernism architecture is really good quality and the rest is bad quality. So I guess the renovation project, the balance is the same. So we have 2% of very good renovation project, but the majority is really a poor one. So let's not be mistaken with that optimism, and there's a lot of work still to be done. So my question would be, what could be the role of an architect in this kind of huge projects that mainly require governmental solutions? And you are lucky if you have a city administration, Paolo Mazzoleni, but that's not always the case. You are lucky if you are an agency and you have Christophe Houtan and Lacaton and Vassal at the steer of the project, but that's not always the case. So maybe you have some insight. What steps and what actions could architects or architect society take to make those governmental or local programs to look at the architecture quality, not only at energy efficiency? So who wants to speak first? Maybe Christophe.
You are right to say that maybe the project I have shown is an exception, because in France, we are having this crazy culture to demolish. The policy in France to urban regeneration is to demolish. We have demolished maybe 100,000 units in the last 20 years, which is a lot, because you put a lot of public money. And when you demolish one, you build one, but at the end, the result is zero. So you don't create housing, you just change the shape, the form, but you don't create anything. This is the first point. And you can say that some buildings don't have quality, but maybe it's because we don't spend enough time to understand what are the qualities. And it's very simple to say that there is no quality. The best ecological building is the one which already exists. So this is the first quality of the existing modern building. And also for architects, it's good for creation. I don't know what other architect thinks, but myself, I'm very lazy. So it's very cool to transform a building existing. So you don't have to start from a white page. And a part of the work is already done. And you just have to continue the story of the building and of the city. And you don't create a new world every time you make a project. So the policy, maybe you have to say we have to say that we don't have to demolish anymore. That means that even there is low quality. That means you have to think more. So maybe the rules, the simple things to say is to say you have to transform and not demolishing. This is the only thing that we can propose. And after, professional and all the people must go around the table and start to think and to make the work.
Thank you, Christoph. Paolo, do you want to intervene? What would be the role of an architect?
we have a very different situation in Italy. We are not so well, good, but it's not good. We are not so used to demolish. We are, but not because we are better, just because we are very conservative. But at the same time, we are not so clear that if you don't want to demolish, you have to work on that. No, it's more surprising when you discuss about this with general people, let's say, not technicians, is that they really can't understand that this is a design operation. No, it's not maintenance. It's a design operation. You have to reconceive the spaces to save the building, you know? And that's very complicated to be explained. And so we are spending an enormous amount of money to increase the supposed quality of these places, you know, with physical things like better insulation, better pipes or whatever, but not rethinking the space. And that's crazy. You know, the example we have seen there, they are design example, they rethink the space. No? And so what we are trying to, the opportunity we have, and that's what we are trying to do on the rules here, is that it's a big change in the city, and also in Italy is not that common. It's to call people that know things to govern the city. I don't know how to explain better than this. No? So I'm not a politician, I'm an architect, I'm a designer. And so what I'm trying to do is to bring the things I've seen, the things I know, the things that are obvious for me inside the political decision. That's quite an issue. It's not that easy as I thought. The first months have been very frustrating, but we are working hard. And I hope that this kind of interchange of information that we are doing today founds ambassador. I will try to be one of them to bring this competence that is very strong, because it's maybe true that we only have a few percent, 2-3% of things done, but they are incredible projects. And so you can learn a lot from them. And the big issue is to bring this to normality, to bring this to the rules, to bring things. Some of the things we have seen in Italy, they are just illegal because you can't put something on the top or something on the facade. So the first thing is to make it legal, and then to explain to everybody that it's the right way to manage the issue, and to disseminate. I think this is what we should try to do.
For me, it's an educational role for the architect to take up. Anyone else wants to step in with some insights? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add, after Christoph and Paolo, that to intervene on existing buildings, it needs time for studies, and most of the clients, mainly private ones, they are tempted to see this time and money for the beginning as a waste of time and money. So we really need to make them understand that we can't decide that it's more economical at first view and short sight to demolish and rebuild one. Indeed, if we have a global approach in economy and in sustainability, it's always more economical to rehabilitate, to renovate. And the second thing I wanted to add is that we really need to valorize the renovation and rehabilitation projects. And that's why it's really important to have this kind of events and conferences and exchanges, because for a long time, I'm still young, but I've seen that professional reviews and prestigious prizes and things like that, they were mainly dedicated to a project of construction, to which were seen as maybe more creative, more prestigious, and things like that. So it was really hard to make our clients understand that, in fact, intervene on the existing building, yes, it can be seen as a form of laziness, but I think it's mainly a sign of intelligence and creativity, and because you have a lot of constraints. That's
okay. Thank you, Maureen. Now, anyone else wants to step in before the lunch break? With the role of an architect on enhancing the quality of renovation. Oh, I can see Mona Shalin. Okay,
yeah,
Mona, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Well, it's been extremely interesting. I have been listening part-time during this morning, and I think well, most of the projects have had to do with this a bit later post-war period. We started in Finland in the 1990s inventories of modern architecture, maybe because we have so much of that and so little of this ancient architecture before the 18th century. There's very little left. So the 20th century is really our main building stock is from the 20th century and after the Second World War. And maybe that's the reason why also the city of Helsinki, for instance, has done a lot of inventories. And I think it started with that, trying to find out what is there and what are the values and the assessment. And then we started arranging courses of international conservation of modern architecture. And in 2006, we had this international course, the MARC courses, together with ICROM, which we mainly focused on the 1960s and 1970s suburban architecture in the Nordic Scandinavian countries and then around the world. And I think this kind of education for architects is very important because it opens the eyes towards that. It's like we heard in the morning, it's not always a question of beauty. We are dealing, like you said, Ruth, I think, that we are dealing with also with environments that are familiar with the people who live there, that they have already founded their own family history, perhaps in these suburban areas, this 1960s, 70s buildings. When you have interviewed people, you find that they don't consider them as a kind of problem aesthetically and socially, but it's their home, and this is also important to remember. Of course, we have a lot of green areas around these suburbs, so we don't have this kind of very dense cities. More like you can go out in the forests around your suburban areas, which makes that the contrast between the architecture and the surroundings may exist, but you still have access to that. I think it's very important to think about how people use the outdoor spaces too, and that we need to, these areas were usually planned with quite a lot of outdoor spaces between the houses, and that's something that we are losing today in new town planning, which focused on densification and densification of these suburban areas too. But I don't know, you can say something about that later on.
Yes, Mona, we will have your presentation later. So I will now announce a lunch break. We will have a lunch until 2 o'clock Paris time. So we will come back in 1 hour and we listen to more good examples from Europe. And from the first session, I will take out that sensitivity, ability to listen, making analysis, and understanding that it's not only about the image, but also about the content. And the role of an architect is not only being ears, but also being a mouth So teach and preach, this is the role of an architect to do if we want to get the large scale of good quality holistic renovation. So I will leave you with that. Thank you very much for the morning presentations. I hope that you come back for the afternoon session. And if not, thank you very much for participation, and we will keep in touch. We will not let you go. So thanks again, and we will see in 1 hour.